Zelina from Makola thought she had it all. Her life looked like a dream, the kind you see in magazines or in fairy tales. She was married to Thabiso, one of the richest and most powerful businessmen in the city. He spoiled her with everything: 5-star vacations in Dubai, diamonds that sparkled like stars, designer bags straight from Paris. Their mansion in Adum had golden railings, marble floors, and even a personal chef. Everyone around her said she was the luckiest woman alive, and for a while she believed them. Thabiso was charming and generous. He'd send her roses just because it was Wednesday, whisper promises of forever, and hold her hand like she was the only woman in the world. Zelina truly believed in their love, in their future. But then, little things started to change. It began with short, hushed phone calls late at night. He'd step out of the room to talk, saying it was business. Then came the sudden trips he never used to take. He'd pack in a rush, say he'd be gone just 2 nights, and leave without even kissing her goodbye. At first, Zelina tried to ignore it. She told herself not to overthink. But deep down, her heart started to ache. The man who once looked at her like she was his everything now barely looked at her at all. And every time he smiled at his phone or left the house late, a knot twisted tighter in her stomach. She didn't know it yet, but the life she thought was perfect was starting to crumble, piece by painful piece. Zelina had dressed up beautifully for the charity gala that evening. A long silver gown, soft curls in her hair, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, she and Thabiso could reconnect. It had been weeks since they'd spent real time together. He'd been cold, distant, always too busy, but this was their world. Parties, cameras, flashing lights. She thought being seen together again would remind him of what they once were. She stood near the entrance, scanning the crowd, her heart racing. Then, the doors opened, and everything inside her shattered. There he was, Thabiso, smiling, laughing, looking more alive than he had in months. But he wasn't alone. On his arm was a woman, tall, confident, in a tight black dress and bright red heels that clicked like gunshots on the marble floor. It was Nandi, his secretary, the same woman Zelina had seen in the background of meetings, the one who always answered his calls too quickly, who once accidentally texted him at midnight. Zelina's heart dropped. Her hands went cold. People around her noticed too. Whispers floated through the air like smoke. Heads turned. Some eyes pitied her. Others just watched like it was a movie. And worst of all, Thabiso didn't even flinch. He didn't look guilty or nervous. He didn't hide. He walked in like she didn't exist. Nandi clung to his arm like she belonged there. She smiled sweetly, that fake, smug smile that said you lost. And Zelina, she stood frozen, her soul screaming, her pride crumbling. She had wondered, she had worried, but seeing it with her own eyes was something else. It wasn't just betrayal, it was public humiliation. And in that moment, surrounded by diamonds and fake laughter, Zelina realized her worst fear wasn't just true, it was being paraded in front of the whole city. The morning after the gala, Zelina woke up with a heavy heart. She hadn't slept much. Her mind kept replaying the image of Thabiso with Nandi, the red heels, the whispers, the way he looked right through her like she was invisible. She hoped, deep down, that he'd come home with an explanation, maybe even an apology. But when Thabiso walked through the door that day, he wasn't the man she had married. His eyes were cold, his face unreadable. No warmth, no love, just silence. Without even sitting down, he looked at her and said, "You need to leave," just like that. No warning, no discussion. Zelina blinked, thinking she'd heard wrong. "Leave?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Leave what?" He didn't flinch. "The house. I want you out by tomorrow." That house in Adum wasn't just a house. It was their home, the place where they laughed, where she hung their wedding photos, where she helped plan his first big business launch. Every corner of it held memories, now turned into wounds. She stared at him, waiting for some kind of reason, some small sign of regret, but there was none. No tears, no explanation, just a heartless man who had clearly moved on. Zelina packed her things with shaking hands, just a few bags. The rest, she left behind. The dresses, the perfumes, the framed photos. What hurt the most wasn't the loss of the mansion, or the wealth, or the luxury. It was the feeling of being thrown away like she meant nothing. Like everything they'd built together was just a chapter he had no interest in rereading. She walked out the gates she once entered with joy, now with tears in her eyes and pain in her chest. She was heartbroken, humiliated, but as she stood outside, Watching the life she thought she'd have disappear behind her, one thought stayed strong in her mind. This isn't the end. Not yet. Zelina sat on the edge of a small mattress in her friend's spare room, hugging her knees, her eyes swollen from crying. Just days ago, she was living in a mansion, wearing designer dresses, planning her next vacation. Now, she had 2 suitcases, no home, no husband, and no idea what tomorrow would look like. Everything had been ripped away, just like that. One minute she was Thabiso's wife, the next, she was nobody. But as the silence settled, something inside her slowly began to shift. She thought back to the early days, before the jets, before the million. She was there when Thabiso had nothing. She sat beside him through sleepless nights, helped him write his first business proposal, took calls for him, managed his schedule. She knew his passwords. She knew every investor's name, every supplier, every weakness. She was never just a trophy wife. She was the silent force behind the empire. And now he had thrown her out like she was just another piece of furniture. But he had made one mistake. He underestimated her. Wiping her tears, Zelina pulled out a notebook. Her hands were still shaking, but her mind was sharp. She began writing names, plans, ideas. She remembered who owed favors, who had secrets, and who really ran the show behind the scenes. She didn't know exactly what her next move was yet, but she knew one thing. She wasn't going to stay down. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about justice. It was about rising from the ashes. If Thabiso thought he had won, he had no idea what was coming. Zelina wasn't just planning to survive. She was planning to take everything back and more. Zelina poured every drop of pain, betrayal, and strength into something new, her own company. She called it ZeiTech Innovations. The name was bold, sharp, and personal. It wasn't just a brand, it was her comeback. She started small, just a borrowed laptop, a rented desk in a shared office, and her notebook full of plans. But she had something money couldn't buy: knowledge. She knew the industry inside out. She knew the players, and more importantly, she knew how to play the game better than anyone. She reached out to old contacts, people who had once done business with Thabiso. Some were surprised to hear from her. Others quietly admitted they had always respected her. They just never knew how much she really did behind the scenes. Now she was stepping into the spotlight. Her first pitch to investors left the room silent, in the best way. She spoke with calm fire, the kind of quiet power that comes from someone who's been broken and rebuilt. Every word had weight. Every idea had impact. People didn't just believe in her. They wanted to be part of her journey. Within a few months, ZeiTech was making headlines. Investors lined up. Clients signed contracts. Tech blogs and business magazines called her the woman to watch. She was everywhere. Her startup was solving real problems, offering smart digital solutions that no one else had thought of. It wasn't just a company, it was a movement. And when Thabiso first heard about it, he laughed. He told people, "She's emotional, she won't last." But soon his smile faded. The numbers didn't lie. Zelina wasn't just surviving, she was rising, fast. And the city, it was watching, not with pity, but with admiration. She wasn't the ex-wife anymore. She was the founder, the boss, the woman who turned heartbreak into a billion-seedy idea. And she was just getting started. Late one night, while the city slept, Zelina sat in front of her laptop with a hard drive in her hand, the same one she had taken quietly before leaving the mansion. It held years of files, emails, documents, things Thabiso never thought she'd keep, let alone understand. But she remembered everything. She had been part of the foundation of his empire. She knew where to look, what names to search, which folders to open. And what she found was darker than she expected. There were shady contracts with fake signatures, money transfers that didn't make sense, and secret accounts in other countries. Some files even hinted at blackmail, messages sent to silence people who threatened to expose him. And the taxes, he hadn't paid properly in years. It was all there, clear as day. Thabiso had built his kingdom not just on business, but on lies. And Zelina, the woman he tossed aside like nothing, was now holding the truth in her hands. She didn't react right away. She took a deep breath, made copies, and carefully sent everything to the right places, anonymously. The tax office, a few government watchdogs, and of course the media. Days later, it exploded. News anchors said his name like it was poison. Top CEO under investigation for fraud. Exclusive, Leaked files reveal corruption scandal. It was everywhere. TV, newspapers, blogs, social media. His smiling face was now on the screen for all the wrong reasons. Clients backed out. Investors pulled their money. People he once called friends stopped answering his calls. He tried to deny it all, but the evidence was too clear, too real. Zelina watched it unfold from her office window, quiet and calm. The same man who humiliated her in public was now being dragged through the mud by the truth, and she hadn't even shown her face. She didn't do it out of hate. She did it out of justice. He had built his empire by stepping on others, including her. Now it was all crashing down. And the best part? He had no idea who brought him down, but she knew, and that was enough. When Thabiso's empire started falling apart, he was desperate to keep it alive. So, in a shocking move, he handed the keys of his company to Nandi, the same woman in red heels who once smiled proudly at his side. She wasn't just the mistress anymore. She was now the boss. But there was one big problem. Nandi had no idea what she was doing. Running a company wasn't about looking good in designer clothes or throwing around fancy words in meetings. It was about strategy, leadership, decisions, and Nandi had none of it. On her first day in the office, she tried to hold a team meeting, but didn't even know most of the department names. She made promises she couldn't keep, gave orders that made no sense, and treated experienced employees like they were beneath her. It didn't take long for people to see the truth. One by one, the best workers resigned, clients cancelled contracts, partners distanced themselves. The office that was once busy and booming turned cold and quiet. The company's name, once a symbol of power, became a running joke in the business world. Some employees even said she spent more time fixing her nails than reading reports. Chaos wasn't just knocking, it had moved in. Meanwhile, across town, Zelina's company, ZeiTech Innovations, was rising like a star. Her face was on magazine covers. Her story was featured on business blogs and talk shows. Billboards lit up with her brand's logo. She didn't just build a company, she built respect. She led with intelligence and grace, the same way she had once helped Thabiso behind the scenes. But this time, it was all hers. And as for Nandi, the red heels weren't so shiny anymore. She was drowning in problems she couldn't solve, sitting in a chair that was never hers to begin with. The same people who once whispered about her in admiration now laughed behind her back. Zelina didn't need revenge anymore. Reality was doing the work for her. Thabiso used to be untouchable. Private jets, VIP lounges, first-class meetings in cities most people only dream of. His name was on buildings, in magazines, on every business panel in town. People used to lower their voices when they spoke about him, not out of fear, but out of awe. He was the mighty Thabiso, the man who built an empire. But now, those same people were whispering something very different. What happened to him? He looked tired. His suits weren't tailored anymore. The sparkle in his eyes was gone. Rumors started spreading. Unpaid debts, frozen accounts, investors pulling out. People said he was asking for loans, begging old partners for second chances. Some said he even tried selling off his luxury cars just to cover staff salaries. The fall was fast, and it was painful. Then, one afternoon, the whole city turned its attention to a press conference. The media had been buzzing for days. Zelina had announced she was finally telling her story. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. The room was packed. And when she stepped onto that stage, she wasn't the heartbroken wife people remembered. She was strong, elegant, and calm. Every bit the boss she had become. She told her story simply, truthfully. No shouting, no drama, just the facts. How she had helped build Thabiso's empire. How she was thrown out without warning. How she picked herself up and started again. And yes, how she exposed the lies behind the powerful man everyone once praised. The room went silent when she finished. Then came the questions, the cheers, the headlines. The woman behind Thabiso's fall speaks out. From betrayal to power, Zelina's rise. Her face was everywhere. But more than fame, she gained something bigger. Respect. Thabiso watched from a distance, stunned. The same woman he tried to erase had become the one name the entire city now admired. Zelina didn't just survive the storm, she became the storm. And now, the world finally knew the truth. The empire had fallen, and the woman he underestimated was the one who brought it down, with grace. One quiet afternoon, Zelina was in her glass-walled office, reviewing a new project when her assistant walked in, looking unsure. "There's someone here to see you," she said softly. Zelina looked up, curious. "Who?" The assistant hesitated, then whispered, "It's Thabiso." For a moment, Zelina didn't move. She felt a rush of emotions, surprise, anger, even a hint of old sadness, but she simply nodded and said, "Let him in." When the door opened, it didn't feel real. Thabiso stood there, but he was not the man she remembered. His suit was wrinkled, his face looked tired and thin, and worst of all, his once polished shoes were torn at the sides. The powerful, proud man who once made people nervous just by walking into a room now looked like he had been through a war. And maybe, in a way, he had. He didn't waste time pretending. He sat down and spoke quietly. "Zelina, I messed up. I lost everything, and I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I need your help. I need a job." Zelina listened without interrupting. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just looked at him. The same man who once threw her out like she was nothing. And now he was here. Not just asking for work, but asking for a second chance. She gave a small, calm smile. "I hope you find your way again," she said gently. "But I don't have anything for you here." He looked down, crushed. "Not even forgiveness," he whispered. Zelina stood up slowly, still composed. "I forgave you a long time ago," she said, "but that doesn't mean I'll let you back into my life." There was no hatred in her voice, no anger, just peace. She had moved on, she had healed, and she had built a life where Thabiso no longer had a place. He left quietly, with heavy steps and a heavier heart. Zelina walked back to her desk, proud and unshaken. She had nothing more to give him, not her love, not her time, and certainly not her pity. Zelina had money now, success, and her name on buildings. But for her, that wasn't the real victory. The real win was turning her pain into purpose. She knew there were so many women out there just like her, women who had been betrayed, abandoned, silenced, and left to start over with nothing. And she didn't want them to walk that road alone. So, with her head held high, Zelina launched the ZeiTech Foundation, a space to support, train, and uplift women who had been broken like she once was. The foundation offered free business classes, therapy sessions, legal advice, and startup funding for women ready to rebuild their lives. It wasn't about charity, it was about giving power back. Her story spread far and wide. Social media exploded with love. Women from all over the country messaged her saying, "You gave me hope." Girls who thought their lives were over started dreaming again. Single mothers, struggling wives, even young students, all looked up to her, not just as a businesswoman, but as a symbol of strength. Zelina didn't need revenge anymore. She didn't need to prove anything to Thabiso or the people who once laughed at her pain. She had done something bigger. She turned her heartbreak into healing, not just for herself, but for others too. She didn't just win against her ex. She won the hearts of thousands. She won her life back. And this time, she was never going to let it go.